Number 10. The Bump and Grind. In 2019, a bizarre video appeared online of an extremely drunk woman who was apparently trying to seduce a police officer in the middle of an arrest. Her name is April Rose Teal, and she had recently graduated from the University of Alabama. She was out one night partying when something went wrong and she was arrested for disorderly conduct in front of a Waffle House. As the officer pressed the 24-year-old woman against a window and tried to handcuff her, she leaned forward, thrusted her back end out, and grinded herself against the cop. What followed was by far one of the most bizarre arrests that's ever been caught on camera. The woman clenched her teeth and moaned at the cop, made some pretty inappropriate words and sounds, and continued to rub her rear end against the guy. She was ultimately thrown into a cop car and then later charged with not only disorderly conduct, but harassment as well. When asked in an interview what happened, the college graduate said she had drank too much Jaeger and bootlegger, and things in Tuscaloosa just got too out of control. Number 9. Topless in an Uber. A topless woman tried to seduce her Uber driver in January of 2018. It happened in Louisiana, and it was all part of a scam to distract the driver while her boyfriend robbed a guy at knife point. The first thing to know is that this didn't actually happen during the Uber ride. It was after the fact, when the driver had already dropped Raina off at her home. According to the Harahan Police Department, Raina Filios called the Uber back, said she had really liked him, and that he should come over to her house immediately. The Uber driver couldn't resist, but when he showed up and knocked on the door, Raina answered it without a top on. There was a brief conversation. The Uber driver appeared to realize he had just gotten himself into some trouble, and he tried to leave. That was when Raina reached out and grabbed him, gave him a kiss, and at the same time, her boyfriend Anthony Kennedy pulled out a knife. The Uber driver was assaulted by the boyfriend and had his teeth knocked out of his face. And in the end, he didn't even have any money to fork over. The driver ran back to his car and drove off. Anthony ran away into the night, and Raina was left standing there on her doorstep with no shirt on. The police did catch up to Anthony, though they had to flush him out of his own house using a police dog. Both suspects were then arrested and booked on charges of robbery. Number 8. Seduced into a confession. In July of 1992, Rachel Nichol was stabbed 49 times while she clung to her 2-year-old son, Alexander. The 23-year-old model was butchered in the worst way possible, whilst her toddler witnessed the whole grisly affair. When a passerby discovered Rachel, the boy was clinging to her side, begging for his mom to wake up. It was a horrible killing that shocked the nation, and the police were doing everything they could to find the perpetrator. This led them to Colin Stagg, who lived pretty close to the area of Wimbledon Common where the killing took place. The police were so desperate to get a confession that they did something unthinkable. They set a honey trap involving a female officer. Undercover specialist codenamed Lizzie James was sent to seduce Colin Stagg and get a confession out of him by any means necessary. It was an absolute bungle of an operation. She spent months talking to him on the phone, promising him a relationship, but she could never coax a confession out of him. Then she stepped things up a notch and started lying. She told Colin about an experience in which she'd killed a mother and her baby during a satanic ritual. This was supposed to make Colin open up, but it sickened him instead. When her disgusting story didn't work to elicit a confession, she gave him an ultimatum. He could either confess that he killed Rachel, or she would never talk to him again. In the end, she didn't get a confession, even though she had spent months seducing this guy. He was charged because he fit a sketch of the killer, but the whole case was thrown out of court. 14 years later, serial murderer Robert Napper was finally identified as the real killer. As for Lizzie James, whose real name we don't know, she had to go into witness protection after botching the case so badly. Number 7. The Sneaky Seductors. On May 25, 2014, Ashley Nicole Dunn met a Pompano Beach man at the Blue Martini Bar in Fort Lauderdale. Ashley was 26 years old. The man she met was 45. After a bit of talk, the man took Ashley back to his apartment. He made them a couple of drinks, and that was when the action was supposed to start. But that's not what happened. Because the man woke up the next morning, realizing he had been drugged and robbed. His watches were gone, and his laptop and bank cards were missing. This was only one incident involving Ashley and her friend Penny Barbosa. These two went on a wild crime spree at the Blue Martini Bar, continuously showing up, seducing really old men, and then drugging them back at their apartments and stealing their stuff. Penny was busted doing the same thing to a 65-year-old man from Oakland Park. They had a couple of drinks in August, went back to his place, and things were about to get hot and heavy. But after the man took his Rolex watch off and put it on the bedroom dresser, Penny snatched it and ran out the door. And yes, they even did this kind of thing together. They worked as a team to seduce a man at the Blue Martini Bar, spike his drink, then go back to his place and rob him. They did it so much that they eventually got caught and arrested. Although, according to the Sunny Isles Police Department, both were released on bail shortly after. Number 6. Mr. Smooth. In September of 2020, Timothy Bremer was given a jail sentence of 10.5 years. He was convicted of killing Claire Parry in the parking lot of a pub in Dorset that May. He was originally found not guilty of murder, but still guilty on the charge of manslaughter. Timothy was a Dorset police officer and was married to a detective, but he was also a serial seducer. Timothy was having an affair with Claire Parry, who also happened to be a married woman. That afternoon in his car, he strangled her to death. He did it because Claire Parry had been stricken by a sudden moral obligation to tell Timothy's wife what was going on. So she sent a text message to his wife Martha, and that was when Timothy began choking the life out of her. After he killed Claire, he tried to work his way out of it by lying. He made up a bizarre story that he had tried to push her out of his vehicle, but had accidentally fallen on top of her. Timothy said his arms accidentally twisted around her neck, and they got all pretzeled up until she was choked to death. Even though he was given 10 years, he'll probably be out in about half of that time. Realizing this, the judge made a tweak to the sentence and gave him an extra 3 years. It was pretty clear during the trial that Timothy had a major issue with women. He was described as Mr. Smooth, someone who was so devious with his affairs he would even keep his wedding ring on when he picked up strange women. Number 5. The Inside Job. Lydia Lauro got herself a civilian job working at the Hammersmith police station. It was 2 months after her boyfriend was convicted of a shooting just outside the Wandsworth prison in the UK. His name is Leon de St. Aubin, and he was charged with killing someone execution style in what appeared to be a gang-related attack. 2 months after Lydia had been working at the police station, she seduced one of the detention officers there, a man named Hayden Cherrimer. It was all part of her plan to steal his login credentials and get access to the police intelligence system. She then dug through the confidential files to discover the identity of a key witness to her boyfriend's case. She handed that information over to him while he was behind bars. That way he would be able to seek revenge. It was an extremely complex plot that involved multiple people, all just so a murderer could get revenge on the eyewitness in their case. Lydia, the seducer, and the detention officer who messed up and gave her the info were both arrested. They were found guilty of misconduct in public office between November 2011 and May 2013 and given 5 years in jail. Number 4. Drugged at the nightclub. A woman in Florida was arrested for terrorizing Miami and Miami Beach nightclubs. Her name is Liz Rios, and her reign of terror went on for a whole summer in 2016. She was only 21 years old when she started picking up men at nightclubs, getting intimate with them, and then stealing all their stuff. But Liz Rios went about her robberies in a slightly different way than some of the other women who've been caught doing this. According to one of her victims, she gave him the entire girlfriend experience. They met at the club, she went home with him, they spent the night together, and they hung out all the way into the next day. When they got up, she even made him breakfast at about 2 o'clock in the afternoon. But after he ate breakfast, he passed out hard. He believes that Liz drugged his food rather than just drugging him the night before. Once he was passed out, she made off with over $50,000 worth of jewelry. Liz went on doing this until she accumulated multiple victims. The police finally arrested her in December by putting together fingerprints and pieces of surveillance footage. She was then charged with theft, food poisoning, and drug possession. Number 3. Seductress housekeepers in Italy. In 2022, Italian police busted a criminal organization which specialized in making women work as housekeepers in the homes of elderly men. These fake housekeepers had explicit orders to seduce the elderly men, take whatever money they could get from them, and send it back to their handlers in Romania. This is according to the press release from the European Union's law agency, Europol. The specific men the girls targeted were aged between 70 and 90. These were men who were isolated from the rest of their family. In total, 56 members of the criminal group were identified, including those who organized the whole fake maid service. This was a long con kind of game. The women would embezzle themselves into these older men's lives, then continue to seduce them as they slowly whittled away their funds until they had nothing left. And if the victims refused to hand over money, the women would simply extort them. This massive operation pulled in over $1 million before the Europol officers finally shut it down. But since the gang operated in multiple European nations, it's been difficult to track down and arrest all the females involved. They were only able to search 23 houses and arrest 13 suspects in 3 different countries. Number 2. Drugged and robbed. Yoma Fouad was arrested in May of 2017 for seducing a man in Florida and running away with all his most prized possessions. She told the judge after appearing in court that she was working as a lady for hire and that her specialty was seducing men who she met at clubs in Miami and then stealing all their goods. She was actually busted outside the Rockwell Nightclub in Miami Beach after someone she had already robbed recognized her standing in front of the place. He approached her, started accusing her of being a thief. The police showed up and she was taken away in the back of a squad car. According to her accuser, a man named Alan Galette, the 21-year-old woman took off with his clothes stuffed into a bag, his cash, his Rolex watch, all worth a total of around $32,000. This was after they met at the valet outside the club, had gone back to his house and gotten physical, and he fell asleep. She had slipped something into his drink to make him pass out hard, then fled with his belongings while he was out cold. In his defense, Alan said she had a really innocent face and that he never expected her to be a thief. He also said that at the time, he wasn't aware that she was a working girl. Once police started the investigation, it became pretty clear that Yoma did this kind of thing a lot. She was held on a bail of $50,000, which she couldn't pay. And so she was stuck in the Turner Guilford Night Correctional Center in Miami, facing charges of theft. Number 1. The Black Widow of Facebook. A glamorous young woman has been dubbed the Black Widow of Facebook. She was caught scamming at least 15 men who she met and seduced online. Her name is Sofia Davila, and she had more attention than she knew what to do with on social media. She posted all kinds of risque photographs and found it was incredibly easy to meet any man she wanted for a date. She could use social media to figure out which men looked to be the most wealthy and pick her targets wisely. She would meet them for a drink, slip drugs into their glass, and then make away with all the goods in their home. She operated out of the Argentinian capital of Buenos Aires. The police caught on to her scam after they received multiple complaints from men who had been drugged and robbed. One victim, a man named Diego, told the police he woke up with his hands and feet bound with rope, while two men he had never seen before were literally emptying his apartment of everything in it. Sophia didn't just steal money and watches, she emptied out entire apartments. We don't know what's become of her now, only that she was arrested in 2015, along with her two male accomplices. Thanks for watching. Would you rather be seduced and robbed by an attractive stranger, or just plain old robbed by someone on the street? Which would be the worst? Let us know in the comments below, and don't forget to subscribe. See you next time.